I bet you can't do this, Jamal. You people just don't have the brain for real math, Mrs. Patricia Whitman sneered as she slammed the marker down, pointing directly at the 16-year-old black student in the back row. Every head in Lincoln High's Algebra 2 class whipped around to stare. Jamal Thompson's face burned with humiliation as snickers rippled through the classroom. Mrs. Whitman stepped closer to his desk, her voice rising for maximum impact. Come on up here and embarrass yourself properly. Show everyone exactly why some students belong in remedial classes. She gestured dismissively at the complex equation covering the whiteboard. Or are you too scared to even try? Devin Martinez grabbed his friend's arm, shaking his head frantically. But Jamal's hands were already clenched into fists. The entire room held its breath, phones recording, waiting for the inevitable breakdown. Mrs. Whitman crossed her arms triumphantly, savoring her moment of public humiliation. Have you ever been crushed before you even stood up? Let me paint you a picture of Lincoln High School on Chicago's South Side. This isn't the kind of school you see in movies with shiny hallways and endless resources. Here, 85% of kids qualify for free lunch. Math textbooks are from 2015. Calculators are held together with duct tape. And hope? Well, hope feels like a luxury most families can't afford. Walking into Mrs. Patricia Whitman's third-period Algebra 2 class, you'd see exactly what she wants you to see. 28 desks arranged in perfect rows, the smart kids like Keisha Williams sitting up front, hands raised, eager to please. And in the back corner, hood pulled up, sits Jamal Thompson. To everyone in that room, Jamal looks like trouble waiting to happen. He slouches low in his seat. Earbuds dangle from his hoodie. Teachers see exactly what they expect. Another inner-city kid checking out of his education. What they don't see is the smartphone hidden under his desk, where last night he solved calculus problems at Khan Academy until 2 in the morning. Here's what nobody knows about Jamal Thompson. His father died in a construction accident when he was 12. His mother works double shifts, hospital cafeteria during the day, office cleaning at night. The family survives on $28,000 a year, every single dollar stretched thin. But while other kids his age are playing video games or hanging out, Jamal works security at the school gym 3 nights a week. He mops floors and locks doors, earning $60 weekly that goes straight to his grandmother for groceries. And after those long nights, he goes home and watches MIT lectures on his cracked phone screen. You see, Jamal discovered something magical in 8th grade, a YouTube channel called Professor Leonard, mathematical patterns that dance before his eyes like poetry. While his classmates struggled with basic algebra, he was teaching himself linear equations, quadratic functions, even touching the edges of calculus. But here's the cruel irony. Jamal learned early that being smart made you a target. In middle school, kids beat him up for acting white when he answered questions correctly. So he developed the perfect camouflage, appearing bored, sleeping through lessons he already understood, hiding his brilliant mind behind a mask of indifference. Now let's talk about Mrs. Patricia Whitman, 20 years at Lincoln High, Northwestern graduate who genuinely believes she's helping these kids by managing their expectations. She's not evil, just trapped in her own assumptions. I'm not being cruel, she tells colleagues during lunch. I'm being realistic about their limitations. These kids need practical skills, not false hopes about becoming engineers. Every day, the same toxic pattern plays out. Mrs. Whitman calls on reliable students for difficult questions. She gives Jamal and his friends basic arithmetic, like they're intellectually fragile. When assigning group projects, she steers high achievers away from problem students, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of academic segregation. Devin Martinez, Jamal's best friend since elementary school, sits beside him. Devin knows something's different about Jamal. He's seen him help his little sister with homework, explaining fractions in ways that finally clicked. But whenever Devin asks questions, Jamal just shrugs it off. The classroom reflects this philosophy perfectly. Smart kids in front, problem kids in back. Expectations set in stone before anyone opens a textbook. Success is predetermined by zip codes and assumptions about what certain students can achieve. Today's lesson focuses on quadratic equations. Standard Algebra 2 material, but misses. Whitman chose an intentionally complex example to challenge her advanced students. The equation sprawls across the whiteboard like a mathematical monster. 3 by 2 plus 7x, 11 equals sine 0. She explains methodically, emphasizing proper procedure and systematic thinking. Most students copy notes without understanding. Keisha raises her hand with smart questions. Tyler Carter takes detailed notes for later study. But Jamal? He's not listening to her explanation at all. He's staring at those coefficients, seeing patterns that others completely miss. In his mind, he's already solved this problem 3 different ways. He could explain why each method works and when to use them. He understands the underlying mathematics better than students headed to prestigious universities. The classroom culture demands conformity. Struggle gets sympathy. Excellence gets praise. But hidden genius? That gets buried under assumptions about demographics and destiny. Mrs. Whitman surveys her domain with satisfaction. Most students look appropriately challenged. A few seem lost. This confirms everything she believes about natural mathematical ability. That's when she spots Jamal, hood up, apparently disconnected from learning entirely. What she doesn't realize is that extraordinary talent has been hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to recognize it. How long can brilliance stay invisible? Picture this moment. Mrs. Whitman's eyes lock onto Jamal like a predator spotting prey. His hood is up, head tilted back against the wall, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. To her, this confirms every assumption she's ever made about these students. Mr. Thompson. Her voice slices through the classroom chatter like a knife through butter. Since you seem so confident that my lesson is beneath your intellectual capacity, perhaps you'd like to enlighten us all with your mathematical genius. You can feel the energy shift. 28 students stop breathing. They turn like synchronized swimmers to watch this collision between teacher and student. Devin shoots Jamal a desperate look that screams, "Don't do it, man!" But it's already too late. Mrs. Whitman is moving toward the back of the classroom, marker gripped like a weapon. This is her moment to prove a point about respect, authority, and knowing your place in the academic hierarchy. "Stand up," she commands, her voice dripping with synthetic sweetness that fools nobody. "Come demonstrate for the class how a true mathematician approaches complex problems." Jamal slowly removes his hood and rises. He's tall for 16, all sharp angles and quiet intensity. Around him, students are already pulling out phones, sensing viral content in the making. This is the kind of moment that gets shared thousands of times. A teacher absolutely destroys a student's ego in real time. Mrs. Whitman gestures toward the whiteboard where she's written one of the most complex quadratic equations she could think of. Numbers and variables twisted together in ways designed to confuse and intimidate, the kind of problem that makes honor students sweat. Take all the time you need, Jamal. I'm absolutely certain that with your extensive educational background, this will be elementary. Snickers ripple through the classroom. Keisha Williams shakes her head with secondhand embarrassment. Tyler Carter looks uncomfortable but doesn't dare intervene. The social dynamics are brutal and crystal clear. Jamal is about to be publicly humiliated for the crime of appearing uninterested. Actually, Mrs. Whitman continues, warming to her performance, let's make this entertaining. If you solve this correctly, I'll give the entire class extra credit points. But when you fail, she pauses for maximum dramatic impact. You'll spend next week's lunch periods in detention, solving basic addition problems until you learn proper respect for mathematics. The stakes just exploded. Now Jamal's inevitable failure affects everyone. Students who were indifferent moments ago suddenly have skin in this game. They're watching with the hungry attention of spectators at a car crash. Devin whispers urgently, "Just say you don't know, man. Don't give her what she wants." But something shifts in Jamal's posture. His shoulders straighten like a soldier coming to attention. His eyes focus on that equation with laser intensity. For the first time all semester, he looks genuinely engaged with the material. Mrs. Whitman extends the marker with exaggerated ceremony, like she's handing him the rope for his own academic hanging. "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Thompson, show us what passes for mathematical thinking in your world." Jamal walks to the front of the classroom. Each step echoes in the silence. The complex equation looms before him on the whiteboard. Variables and coefficients arranged like a mathematical maze designed to trap him. Behind him, 28 witnesses wait for his predictable failure. Mrs. Whitman crosses her arms, already composing her follow-up lecture about intellectual humility and knowing one's place. But as Jamal studies the problem, something completely unexpected happens. His expression transforms from resignation to recognition. He's not seeing a confusing jumble of numbers anymore. He's seeing patterns, relationships, mathematical beauty that everyone else missed entirely. What happens when a hidden genius finally decides to step into the light? What happens next changes everything. Jamal doesn't follow the textbook approach that Mrs. Whitman expects. Instead, he stares at the complex equation she's written and does something that makes her eyebrows furrow with confusion. He starts breaking down the problem in a completely different way. Where most students would panic and try to memorize formulas, Jamal sees something else entirely. He begins factoring out numbers, rearranging the equation in ways that make the solution clearer. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Whitman interrupts, her voice sharp with annoyance. "Use the standard method. Follow proper procedure like I taught you." But Jamal doesn't stop. His marker moves across the whiteboard with growing confidence. He's not just solving the problem, he's revealing the mathematical logic underneath in a way that makes the whole class lean forward with curiosity. You see, while Mrs. Whitman taught formulas to memorize, Jamal learned to see patterns. Where she saw complicated procedures, he saw elegant relationships between numbers. His approach is visual, intuitive, and surprisingly effective. "I can see the pattern in the coefficients," he explains quietly, still writing. "When you look at how these numbers relate to each other, they want to factor in a specific way." Students exchange glances. This isn't the mathematical language they're used to hearing. Jamal talks about numbers like they're alive, like they have preferences and personalities. Mrs. Whitman steps closer, trying to follow his logic. But here's the thing. His method works perfectly, and she doesn't fully understand it. Her 20 years of teaching experience suddenly feel inadequate. Jamal finishes the first solution and turns to face the class. "The answer is 7 halves and 1, he says simply. Several students quickly check on their calculators. He's absolutely correct. But Mrs. Whitman isn't satisfied. Her authority has been challenged and she needs to regain control. "Anyone can get lucky with one problem," she declares, moving to the board again. "Real mathematics requires understanding of multiple approaches." She writes another equation, this one even more complex. Numbers twisted together in ways designed to confuse and overwhelm. "Let's see how your creative methods handle this challenge." The room goes quiet again. Even Keisha Williams looks worried. This second problem is significantly harder than anything they've covered in class. Mrs. Whitman is clearly trying to expose Jamal's limitations. Jamal studies the new equation for a full minute. The silence stretches uncomfortably. Some students start to fidget. Devin whispers, "Just say it's too hard, man." But then something clicks in Jamal's mind. His face lights up with recognition. "This one factors too," he says, approaching the board with renewed confidence. "The numbers have a relationship that makes the solution much simpler than it looks." What happens next amazes everyone in the room. Jamal doesn't use the complex formulas that Mrs. Whitman expects. Instead, he spots a pattern that allows him to break the problem into smaller, manageable pieces. He works methodically, explaining each step in language that his classmates actually understand. When you have numbers like these, you can test simple values first. It's like trying keys in a lock. Sometimes the obvious choice works perfectly. Mrs. Whitman watches with growing discomfort. She prepared this problem specifically to be difficult, but Jamal is making it look elementary. His approach is unconventional, but the mathematics is absolutely sound. "How did you know to try that method?" Tyler Carter asks, genuinely curious. Jamal shrugs. "I've seen similar patterns before. When you look at enough problems, you start to recognize the relationships between numbers. It's like learning to read facial expressions. After a while, you just know." Students are taking notes now, not on Mrs. Whitman's formal procedures, but on Jamal's intuitive explanations. His way of thinking about mathematics makes more sense to them than years of traditional instruction. "You're correct again," Mrs. Whitman admits reluctantly. But instead of praising his insight, she doubles down on criticism. However, these pattern recognition techniques only work on carefully selected problems. Real-world mathematics requires systematic approaches, not shortcuts. Jamal turns from the whiteboard, marker still in hand. For the first time all year, he looks directly at his teacher with complete confidence. But isn't understanding the pattern more important than memorizing the procedure? If you really understand why something works, you can adapt it to solve problems you've never seen before. The question hangs in the air like smoke. Several students nod in agreement. They've spent months memorizing formulas without understanding, and here's someone showing them a completely different way to think. Mrs. Whitman realizes she's losing control of the classroom dynamic. Her students are more engaged with Jamal's explanations than they've been with her lessons all semester. Some are even asking him questions instead of her. Devin grins at his best friend with newfound respect. "Bro, where did this come from? You've been holding out on us." Other students cluster around Jamal's desk during the remaining class time, asking him to explain other homework problems. He helps them patiently, breaking down complex concepts into understandable pieces. But Mrs. Whitman isn't finished. She watches this shift in classroom dynamics with growing alarm. If students prefer Jamal's teaching to hers, what does that say about her authority and expertise? As the bell rings and students file out, chattering excitedly about what they've just witnessed, Mrs. Whitman makes a decision. This challenge to her academic authority cannot stand. She begins planning her counterattack. Tyler Carter pulls out his phone in the hallway, reviewing the video he recorded. "Guys, you need to see this," he tells his friends. "Jamal just embarrassed Mrs. Whitman with some next-level math skills." The footage starts spreading through group chats immediately. Students who weren't even in the class begin hearing about the quiet kid who solved impossible problems using methods their teachers never taught them. What happens when word of mathematical genius starts spreading through social media? By lunchtime, everything had changed. Tyler's videos are already racing through group chats faster than cafeteria gossip. Students gather around Jamal's usual table in the corner, phones out, watching him solve that impossible equation over and over again. "Yo, can you help me with my algebra homework?" asks Maria Santos, a junior who's never spoken to Jamal before. She slides her textbook across the table with hopeful eyes. Within minutes, there's a crowd. Kids who normally wouldn't give Jamal a second glance are suddenly treating him like some kind of mathematical oracle. Devin watches with amazement as his best friend explains polynomial factoring in ways that actually make sense. But the real explosion happens when someone posts Tyler's video on TikTok with the caption, "Kid embarrasses math teacher with genius-level skills." Within 2 hours, it had 50,000 views and counting. Comments pour in from students across Chicago, teachers from other schools, even college kids sharing their own stories about being underestimated. The notification pings are constant now. Jamal's phone buzzes every few seconds with new likes, shares, and comments, some supportive, some skeptical, some downright ugly. But the momentum is undeniable. "This is insane," Devin whispers, scrolling through the comments. "People are calling you the next Einstein." During fifth period physics, Mr. Jackson stops by Jamal's desk with a knowing smile. He's a young teacher, maybe 30, who actually seems to care about his students beyond test scores. "I heard you're good with numbers," Mr. Jackson says casually. "Mind helping me with something?" He writes a physics problem on a piece of paper. Something about calculating the trajectory of a baseball thrown from a specific height and angle. The kind of real-world application that usually makes students groan with confusion. Jamal studies it for maybe 30 seconds. Then he starts explaining not just the answer, but the underlying calculus concepts that make the formula work. He talks about derivatives and rates of change like they're old friends. Mr. Jackson's eyes widened. "Where did you learn calculus? That's not taught until senior year." "YouTube mostly," Jamal admits quietly. "Professor Leonard has these amazing videos that break everything down step by step." Word spreads to the chemistry department. Mrs. Carter appears with a problem involving chemical equilibrium and logarithms. Again, Jamal handles it smoothly, explaining pH calculations in terms that make intuitive sense. By the end of the school day, teachers are talking. Not just about a student who's good at math, but about someone who understands mathematical concepts at a level that seems impossible for his background and grade level. Principal Rodriguez finds herself reviewing Jamal's academic file with growing confusion. His math grades show a C+ average, mainly due to missing homework assignments and apparent lack of engagement. But his standardized test scores tell a completely different story. 95th percentile in mathematics, dismissed by previous teachers as a testing anomaly. Teacher comments paint a consistent picture. Disruptive behavior, lacks focus, Shows potential if he applied himself. Nobody mentioned that he might be operating at a mathematical level years beyond his current placement. The social media explosion continues growing. Local education blogs pick up the story. Chicago students start using hashtags like Lincoln Math Genius and Hidden Brilliance. The video views climb past 100,000. But not everyone is celebrating. Mrs. Whitman watches this digital wildfire with a growing alarm. Her carefully maintained classroom authority is crumbling in real time. Students are questioning her methods, comparing her explanations unfavorably to Jamal's intuitive approach. She starts making phone calls, first to Jamal's grandmother requesting a parent conference about disruptive behavior that's affecting the learning environment. Then to department colleagues expressing concerns about students showing off instead of following proper educational protocols. These viral videos are creating unrealistic expectations, she tells the other math teachers during their planning period. One lucky guess doesn't make someone a mathematician. We need to maintain academic standards. Some teachers agree with her, others aren't so sure. Mr. Jackson openly questions whether they've been underestimating students based on preconceived notions about ability and background. The debate splits the faculty. Traditional educators worry about classroom disruption and maintaining authority. Younger teachers see an opportunity to rethink how they approach mathematical instruction. Meanwhile, Jamal's reputation spreads beyond Lincoln High. Students from other Chicago schools start sending him math problems through social media. Some easy, some impossibly difficult. He answers what he can, always explaining his reasoning in clear, accessible language. The mathematics community begins to take notice. A professor from University of Illinois shares the TikTok video with colleagues, sparking discussions about mathematical intuition and non-traditional learning paths. But the real test comes when Mrs. Whitman decides she's had enough. She's prepared a mathematical challenge designed to expose what she believes are the limitations of Jamal's shortcuts and tricks. She's convinced that with the right problem, she can prove that formal mathematical training trumps natural ability every time. The stage is set for a much bigger confrontation. What happens when institutional pride collides with undeniable talent? The next 48 hours turn Jamal's world completely upside down. What started as a classroom moment has exploded into something nobody could have predicted. His phone buzzes constantly with notifications, friend requests, and messages from strangers asking for math help. But fame comes with a price. Tuesday morning, Jamal arrives at school to find students waiting by his locker. Some genuinely need help with homework. Others just want to be part of the phenomenon. A few are clearly recording everything, hoping to capture the next viral moment. "Can you solve this calculus problem my brother sent from college?" asks one sophomore, shoving a crumpled paper at him. "My mom wants to know if you can tutor my little sister," says another. Devin tries to run interference, but it's overwhelming. "Yo, back up and give him some space." The attention feels suffocating. Jamal has spent 4 years perfecting the art of invisibility, and now everyone wants a piece of him. Teachers stop him in hallways. Students point and whisper. The quiet kid who used to blend into the background has become the most watched person at Lincoln High. Meanwhile, Mrs. Whitman is planning her counterattack with military precision. She stays late Tuesday night researching advanced mathematical concepts, preparing what she believes will be an insurmountable challenge. "Pattern recognition only works on simple problems," she mutters to herself, writing increasingly complex equations on scratch paper. Let's see how his intuition handles real mathematical rigor. She's contacted colleagues at other schools, gathering the most difficult problems they can find. Trigonometry involves advanced identities, statistics with probability distributions, even touching the edges of abstract algebra. Mrs. Whitman is convinced that with enough complexity, she can expose the limitations of Jamal's unconventional approach and restore proper respect for traditional mathematical education. But while she plots, Jamal faces obstacles from unexpected directions. Wednesday morning brings the first anonymous note slipped under his locker door. "Stop showing off and acting like you're better than everyone else." During lunch, 3 older students corner him near the vending machines. "Yo, math boy," one sneers. "Think you're too smart for this school now?" Devin immediately steps between them. "Y'all need to back off." The confrontation doesn't escalate, but the message is clear. Some people aren't happy about Jamal's sudden prominence. Success has made him a target in ways he never anticipated. At home, the pressure intensifies from a different angle. His grandmother Rose sits him down after dinner, worrying about creasing her weathered face. "Baby, all this attention. It's making me nervous. Some folks don't like seeing our people succeed. You need to be careful." She's not wrong. The online comments have turned increasingly ugly. Mixed in with genuine support are racist remarks questioning whether Jamal is getting outside help, whether the videos are fake, whether someone like him could really possess advanced mathematical ability. "Maybe you should just lay low for a while," she suggests gently. "Let things cool down." But Jamal can't unsee what he's discovered about himself. For the first time in his life, he feels intellectually alive. Students actually listen when he explains concepts. Teachers acknowledge his abilities. The mathematical beauty he's always seen in private is finally being recognized. Thursday brings new challenges. Mrs. Whitman announces that she's prepared special advanced problems for students who think they've outgrown the regular curriculum. "Since some people believe they're ready for graduate-level mathematics," she says, looking directly at Jamal, "I've arranged some truly challenging material." She's also scheduled a parent conference with his grandmother for Friday afternoon, claiming concerns about disrupted classroom dynamics and the need to discuss Jamal's academic future. The psychological pressure mounts from all sides. Classmates expect him to solve every difficult problem instantly. Teachers scrutinize his every move. Social media followers demand constant proof of his abilities. Devin notices the stress building. "Man, you look exhausted. When's the last time you actually slept?" Jamal has been staying up until 3 a.m., answering mathematical questions from strangers online, trying to help everyone who reaches out. The workload is becoming impossible. But Thursday afternoon brings unexpected support. Mr. Jackson pulls Jamal aside after physics class. "I've been watching what's happening," he says quietly. "Mrs. Whitman is preparing something big for tomorrow. She's been asking other teachers for their most difficult problems." He slides a piece of paper across the desk. "These are some advanced topics she might use. I'm not telling you the answers, but maybe knowing the concepts will help." It's the first time a teacher has actively supported Jamal instead of questioning his abilities or motives. That evening, Tyler Carter messages him privately. "Dude, Mrs. Whitman asked me to delete the videos, said they're causing disruption. I told her no way." The battle lines are becoming clearer. Some faculty members support exploring Jamal's potential. Others see him as a threat to established educational order. The social media phenomenon continues growing. Education reporters from local newspapers start calling Lincoln High, asking for interviews. The school administration finds itself caught between celebrating student achievement and managing unwanted attention. Principal Rodriguez calls an emergency faculty meeting Thursday night. The discussion grows heated as teachers debate how to handle the situation. "We should be nurturing this kind of talent," argues Mr. Jackson. "We should be maintaining classroom discipline and proper educational standards," counters Mrs. Whitman. The divide reflects larger questions about education, equity, and recognizing potential in unexpected places. Friday morning arrives with the weight of accumulated pressure. Jamal walks into Mrs. Whitman's classroom knowing that today will determine something crucial about his future. She's prepared for what she considers the ultimate test. Problems requiring formal mathematical language, rigorous proof techniques, and advanced theoretical knowledge that typically takes years of university study to develop. Today, we'll see the difference between mathematical intuition and genuine mathematical understanding, she announced to the class. Students pull out phones, sensing another historic confrontation. The viral videos have attracted thousands of new followers, all waiting to see what happens next. But as Jamal looks at the problems Mrs. Whitman has prepared, he realizes something important. This isn't really about mathematics anymore. It's about respect, authority, and whether extraordinary talent can emerge from ordinary circumstances. The mathematical challenges are real and difficult, but the deeper question is whether institutional education can recognize and nurture genius when it appears in unexpected forms. Everything has led to this moment. The viral fame, the community support, the academic pressure, the social expectations. Jamal takes a deep breath and approaches the whiteboard one more time. What happens when unstoppable talent meets immovable prejudice? Just as Mrs. Whitman prepares to unveil her ultimate mathematical challenge, something unexpected happens. The classroom door opens, and Principal Rodriguez enters with a woman none of the students recognize. "Excuse the interruption," Miss Rodriguez says. "This is Dr. Sarah Martinez from the University of Chicago Mathematics Department." Dr. Martinez is young for a professor, maybe 40, with kind eyes and an air of genuine curiosity. She's been following the viral videos since yesterday, and what she's seen has brought her here personally. "I hope you don't mind," Dr. Martinez says to Mrs. Whitman. "I've been watching the social media posts about your student. As a researcher in mathematical cognition, I had to see this for myself." Mrs. Whitman forces a smile, clearly annoyed by this unexpected intrusion. "Of course, we were just about to demonstrate the importance of formal mathematical training. But Dr. Martinez has something different in mind." She approaches Jamal with a folder full of papers. "I don't want you to solve problems today. Instead, I want to show you some mathematical proofs and ask what you see." This isn't what anyone expected. Not problem solving, but pattern recognition at a deeper level. Dr. Martinez spread several papers across Jamal's desk. These aren't textbook exercises. They're actual research problems from graduate-level mathematics. Incomplete proofs, theoretical frameworks, abstract concepts that typically require years of advanced study. "Just tell me what patterns you notice," she says gently. "Don't worry about formal language or proper notation. What does your mind see when you look at these?" Jamal studies the papers for several minutes. The classroom is dead silent. Mrs. Whitman watches with growing confusion, unsure where this is heading. Then Jamal starts talking. Not about specific solutions, but about underlying mathematical structures. He points to relationships between different proofs, connections that aren't obvious to casual observation. "This theorem here," he says, pointing to one paper. "It's using the same logical structure as this completely different problem over here. Like they're both examples of something bigger." Dr. Martinez's eyes light up. "Exactly. What else do you see?" For the next 10 minutes, Jamal describes mathematical insights that demonstrate understanding far beyond his formal education level. He's not just solving problems, he's seeing the deep architecture of mathematical truth. Dr. Martinez turns to address the room, her voice filled with excitement. "What you're witnessing is mathematical intuition at an extraordinary level. This kind of pattern recognition typically develops after years of graduate study, if ever." Mrs. Whitman stares in shock. Her entire approach has been based on the assumption that Jamal was using tricks and shortcuts. "He's not just good at mathematics," Dr. Martinez continues. "He thinks mathematically. There's a profound difference. What happens when genius is finally recognized by someone who understands it?" Dr. Martinez's recognition should have been the triumph Jamal needed, but Mrs. Whitman isn't ready to surrender her authority without one final battle. "University assessment or not," she declares, her voice sharp with desperation. "Real mathematics requires more than intuitive pattern recognition. It demands rigorous proof, formal logic, and systematic thinking." The classroom tension ratchets up another notch. Dr. Martinez looks concerned, but she doesn't intervene. This is still Mrs. Whitman's classroom, and academic politics are delicate. Mrs. Whitman moves to the whiteboard with renewed determination. "Let's see how mathematical intuition handles formal proof requirements." She writes out a complex analysis problem involving concepts that wouldn't normally appear until graduate school. But this isn't about finding an answer. It's about constructing a formal mathematical proof using precise academic language. "This problem requires epsilon-delta definitions, logical rigor, and university-level mathematical writing," she announces. "Show us that your understanding meets actual academic standards." The room fills with witnesses now. Students, Dr. Martinez, even Mr. Jackson, who heard the commotion and slipped in. Everyone can feel that something crucial is happening. Jamal approaches the whiteboard with confidence, but as he reads the problem, his expression shifts. For the first time today, uncertainty creeps across his face. He can see the mathematical truth clearly. His intuition tells him exactly why the theorem works and how the proof should flow. But expressing it in the formal academic language that Mrs. Whitman demands, that's completely different territory. "I can see why this works," he begins hesitantly. but I don't know how to write it using all the formal notation you want. Mrs. Whitman's smile returns, cold and triumphant. This is exactly my point. Natural ability needs proper foundation. You can't skip steps in mathematical education. Jamal tries to explain his understanding using the informal language that's always worked for him. He draws diagrams, uses analogies, and describes the logical flow in everyday terms. But Mrs. Whitman cuts him off repeatedly. That's not rigorous! Where's your formal proof structure? Where are the proper mathematical definitions? With each interruption, Jamal's confidence crumbles a little more. The mathematical understanding is absolutely there, but he lacks the academic vocabulary to express it in the way she demands. Students watch in uncomfortable silence as their mathematical hero struggles. Some pull out phones, but this isn't the triumphant content they expected to record. I understand the concept, Jamal says desperately, but I've never learned to write proofs the way universities expect. Mrs. Whitman steps closer, sensing victory. And that's why we have educational standards and proper progression. Enthusiasm isn't enough. Mathematics demands precision, rigor, and formal training that you simply haven't received. For the first time all week, Jamal looks truly defeated. His shoulders slump as the weight of institutional expectations crashes down. Maybe she's right. Maybe intuition and pattern recognition aren't enough. Maybe he really doesn't belong in advanced mathematics without formal credentials. The classroom falls silent except for the ticking clock. Even Dr. Martinez looks uncertain about how to respond. The formal requirements are real, and mathematical communication does require precise language. Perhaps, Mrs. Whitman continues, her voice heavy with false sympathy, this experience will teach you the value of humility and proper respect for mathematical education. Jamal steps away from the whiteboard, his hand dropping to his side. Maybe you're right, he says quietly. Maybe I don't really understand math the way I thought I did. The admission hangs in the air like smoke. Students exchange uncomfortable glances. Devin looks angry but doesn't know how to help. Tyler stops recording, unsure whether this failure should be documented. For a moment, it seems like Mrs. Whitman has won. Formal education has triumphed over natural ability. Institutional authority has been restored. But Dr. Martinez has been watching this exchange with growing concern. She recognizes what's happening, genuine mathematical understanding being crushed by academic gatekeeping. Finally, she speaks up. Jamal, she says gently, can you show us what you see, even if you can't write it formally yet? What happens when mathematical intuition gets a second chance? Dr. Martinez steps forward with quiet authority. Mrs. Whitman, may I suggest something? Mathematical communication has many forms. Some of history's greatest insights came from people who saw the truth before they could formalize it. She turns to Jamal with encouraging eyes. Rigor is important, but understanding comes first. Show us what you see, your way. Permission, that's all Jamal needed. He returns to the whiteboard with renewed purpose, no longer trying to fit his thinking into someone else's academic box. I can't write this like a textbook, he says, his voice growing stronger. But I can show you why it's true. What happens next transforms the entire room. Instead of formal mathematical notation, Jamal begins drawing. Simple shapes that illustrate complex concepts, visual representations that make abstract ideas suddenly accessible. The problem is asking about continuity, he explains, sketching curves on the board. Think of it like this. Imagine you're drawing a line without lifting your pencil. That's continuity. No breaks, no jumps, no sudden changes. Students lean forward, actually understanding for the first time. Mrs. Whitman's formal epsilon-delta definitions never made intuitive sense. But Jamal's explanation clicks immediately. Now, the mathematical proof is just showing that this no-breaks idea works with numbers, he continues. When Mrs. Whitman talks about epsilon and delta, she's really describing how close you can get to any point on the curve. He draws margins around his curve, showing how the mathematical language describes precision. Epsilon is like saying, I want to be this close to the right answer. Delta is saying, if I'm this close to my starting point, I'll definitely hit my target. Dr. Martinez watches with growing amazement. Jamal is explaining graduate-level concepts in ways that make them accessible to high school students. His visual approach reveals the essential truth that formal proofs are designed to capture. But Mrs. Whitman isn't finished. Visual understanding isn't sufficient, she interrupts. Mathematics requires precision. How can we be certain your informal approach is actually correct? This is the moment everything has been building toward. Jamal turns from the whiteboard to face his teacher directly. Because mathematics is truth, not just notation, he says with quiet conviction. The symbols are just how we write down what we discover, but the discovery has to come first. The room goes completely silent. Students stop breathing. This isn't just about solving problems anymore, it's about completely different ways of understanding knowledge itself. You can't memorize your way to understanding, Jamal continues. You have to see the patterns, feel the relationships between ideas. The formal language comes after you understand what you're trying to say. Dr. Martinez realizes she's witnessing something extraordinary. She quickly moves to the board and begins translating Jamal's visual explanation into formal mathematical notation. Watch this, she tells the class. I'm going to write Jamal's intuitive understanding using university-level language. As she works, something magical happens. The formal proof emerges naturally from Jamal's visual logic. Every step he described intuitively corresponds to rigorous mathematical reasoning. His understanding is completely sound, Dr. Martinez announces. He's seeing the mathematical truth that formal proofs are designed to capture. The logic is perfect. He just expressed it differently. Students break into spontaneous applause. They've just watched informal understanding transform into formal proof. More importantly, they've seen that mathematical truth can be approached from multiple directions. But Mrs. Whitman makes one final attempt to discredit what she can't understand. Without formal training, how can we trust that his methods will work on other problems? Jamal doesn't argue. Instead, he approaches the board one more time. Let me show you something, he says quietly. The same visual thinking that solved your continuity problem works for other mathematical ideas too. He begins demonstrating connections between different areas of mathematics, how the continuity concept appears in calculus, statistics, even basic algebra. His pattern recognition reveals underlying unity in topics that usually seem completely separate. Mathematics isn't a collection of random procedures, he explains. It's one big interconnected system. When you see the patterns, you can move between different areas naturally. The demonstration is breathtaking. Jamal shows how his intuitive approach provides a framework for understanding mathematics as a coherent whole rather than isolated subjects to memorize. Even Mrs. Whitman can't argue with what she's witnessing. The mathematical understanding is undeniably present, expressed through methods she never learned to appreciate. Dr. Martinez addresses the room with barely contained excitement. This is why I became a mathematician, to witness moments when someone sees mathematical truth clearly for the first time. She turns to Mrs. Whitman with professional respect, but firm conviction. Formal training is important, but it should build on understanding, not replace it. Jamal has genuine mathematical insight that deserves to be developed, not dismissed. The status flip is complete. The student who was publicly humiliated for appearing disengaged has demonstrated mathematical thinking that impresses a university professor. The teacher who questioned his ability now faces her own assumptions about intelligence and education. Mrs. Whitman stares at the whiteboard covered with Jamal's visual proofs and connecting insights. For 20 years, she's taught mathematics as a series of procedures to follow. But watching Jamal work, she's seen mathematics as a living, breathing system of ideas. The silence stretches uncomfortably long. Students wait for her response. Dr. Martinez watches hopefully. Jamal stands quietly, having said everything he needed to say. Finally, Mrs. Whitman speaks. Her voice is different now, quieter, less certain, touched with something that might be humility. I've never seen these concepts explained this way before, she admits reluctantly. Your understanding appears to be mathematically sound. The words come slowly, like they're being pulled from somewhere deep inside her assumptions about education and ability. Perhaps, she continues, still struggling with the implications, there's more than one way to understand mathematical truth. Students erupt in cheers and applause. Tyler's live stream explodes with comments from viewers around the world. Dr. Martinez smiles with professional satisfaction, but the real victory isn't in the applause. It's in the moment when rigid thinking becomes flexible, when prejudice transforms into possibility, when educational assumptions expand to include extraordinary potential hiding in ordinary places. Jamal looks around the room, at his cheering classmates, his proud friend Devin, his amazed teachers, and finally understands what his grandmother always told him. Show them who you are, baby. The truth always finds a way to shine. What happens when the mathematical genius finally gets the recognition it deserves? As the classroom buzzes with excitement and students share videos that are already going viral again. Principal Rodriguez's phone starts ringing. She steps into the hallway to take the call, returning moments later with an expression of complete shock. "That was the National Science Foundation," she announces to the room. "They've been monitoring the social media coverage of what's happening here." Dr. Martinez's eyes widened with interest. Mrs. Whitman looks confused and slightly alarmed. Students pull out phones, sensing another major development in this already incredible story. "But that's not all," Miss Rodriguez continues. "Dr. Martinez, I believe you have something to share as well." Dr. Martinez nods, pulling out her own phone. "Jamal, I didn't come here just to observe today. I came because MIT's mathematics department has been following your viral videos since yesterday. They asked me to make you an offer." The room goes completely silent. Even the hallway noise seems to fade away as everyone processes what they just heard. "MIT wants to offer you a full scholarship to their summer program for mathematically gifted students," Dr. Martinez explains. "No prerequisites, no formal requirements, just your demonstrated ability to think mathematically at an extraordinary level." Jamal stares at her in disbelief. "MIT? Like the actual MIT?" "The actual MIT," she confirms with a smile. "They're particularly interested in your visual approach to mathematical proof. Some of their researchers believe your methods could revolutionize how we teach complex concepts. But the surprises aren't finished." Ms. Rodriguez steps forward again. "The media attention has reached the district office. They want to feature Lincoln High in a national education documentary about recognizing talent in unexpected places." Mrs. Whitman realizes that the student she tried to humiliate is now being recruited by one of the world's most prestigious universities. The mathematical intuition she dismissed as shortcuts and tricks is being studied by professional researchers. The twist goes deeper. Dr. Martinez reveals that several other universities have reached out after seeing the videos. The University of Chicago wants to discuss early admission. Northwestern is interested in his teaching methods. Even international schools are asking questions. Your story has sparked a national conversation about mathematical education, Dr. Martinez tells Jamal. Educators everywhere are asking whether we're missing potential by focusing too heavily on formal procedures instead of mathematical understanding. The local impact spreads quickly. Other Chicago schools request training sessions on visual mathematics instruction. Teachers across the district want to learn Jamal's approaches. Most surprisingly, Mrs. Whitman makes an unexpected request. "Jamal," she says quietly, "would you be willing to help me learn to teach mathematics the way you understand it? What happens when the educational revolution starts in a single classroom?" 6 months later, everything has changed at Lincoln High School. Jamal returns from MIT's summer program with new confidence but the same generous spirit. He's learned formal mathematical language without losing his intuitive approach to problem solving. Mrs. Whitman's classroom looks completely different now. Gone are the rigid rows of desks. Students work in groups, drawing diagrams, explaining concepts to each other. Mathematical discussions fill the air instead of silent memorization. "I spent 20 years teaching formulas without teaching understanding," she tells visiting educators who come to observe what they're calling the Lincoln Method. "Jamal showed me that intelligence comes in many forms, and wisdom means recognizing them all." Her test scores have improved 40%, but more importantly, her students actually enjoy mathematics now. They see it as creative problem solving rather than academic torture. Jamal tutors struggling students 3 afternoons a week, but his real impact goes beyond individual help. He's helped design a new mathematics curriculum that combines visual learning with traditional instruction. Other schools across Chicago are adopting similar approaches. The ripple effects continue spreading. Educational researchers study his teaching methods. Mathematics departments reconsider how they identify and nurture talent. The viral videos have sparked national conversations about equity, potential, and recognizing genius in unexpected places. Devin grins as he watches his best friend explain calculus concepts to a group of fascinated freshmen. Man, remember when you used to hide how smart you were? I wasn't hiding, Jamal replies thoughtfully. I was protecting myself. But I learned something important. Mathematical truth doesn't care about your background, your school, or your resources. It only cares whether you're willing to see clearly and think honestly. His grandmother Rose watches from the classroom doorway, pride radiating from her weathered face. The boy she raised to be safe has become someone who makes others brave enough to dream bigger. Every person has mathematical intuition, Jamal says, looking directly at you. We just need teachers brave enough to help them find it, and systems flexible enough to nurture it when it appears. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you know a student who's been written off, send them this. If you're a teacher, ask yourself, is there a Jamal in your classroom right now? What assumptions about intelligence are you ready to challenge? Tell us your story in the comments below. For more stories about recognizing hidden potential and fighting educational injustice, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because every classroom has the power to change a life. What genius is waiting to be discovered in your community?
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.